So workers across America have just been handed a huge defeat in the Supreme Court. Now, in a 5-4 decision, the conservatives on the court ruled that employers now have the right to insist that labor disputes get resolved individually rather than allowing workers to join together in class action lawsuits. So basically, the issue here is arbitration. Now, these arbitration agreements, which usually routinely actually get put into employment contracts, sometimes without employees even knowing or noticing, basically means that, look, you have stripped employees of the ability to go and get together and to do class action lawsuits against employers for things like wage theft. So that obviously is bad news for regular workers, regular Americans. Now, it's estimated that about 25 million workers are affected by those types of contracts that bar class action and that force arbitration. Now, unsurprisingly, the conservatives in the court, led by Neil Gorsuch, wrote the decision that massively favors giant multinational corporations. A big surprise. They wrote, "As a matter of policy, these questions are surely debatable. But as a matter of law, the answer is clear. In the Federal Arbitration Act, Congress has instructed federal courts to enforce arbitration agreements according to their terms." But wait a minute. The thing that he mentions in the Federal Arbitration Act, well, that kind of runs contrary to the National Labor Relations Board Act, what actually created the NLRB. So that's sort of the central issue to this entire Supreme Court fight. People are saying on one side, look, these kind of arbitration agreements, you can't actually force them to go through with it because that hurts unions and that hurts their ability to be able to go and organize and get together for class action lawsuits. The other side, Gorsuch's side, the conservative side, says, what? No, they work hand in hand. They work right next to each other, and so it doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't hurt the National Labor Relations Board. It actually pits these two agencies together or against each other. So anyway, that's sort of a rough estimate of what it actually is, what's going on. Now, those terms, as I explained earlier, are often not known by employees, the terms of these contracts and arbitration. And actually, in some cases, might be conditional to employment. In fact, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg argued back in October that these contracts were like what they called yellow dog contracts that required workers to forswear union membership. So that's actually a reason why they were outlawed back in 1932. Like, hey, look, you've got these contracts, but you can't actually say you're in a union, or you can't actually become a part of a union because you would be in violation of a contract, which means you can get fired for no reason. Well, now they're putting these same things in the contracts that saying that you have forced arbitration. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Justice Stephen Breyer said a decision for employers would overturn labor law, undermining and changing radically what has gone back to the New Deal. Now, in her dissent, Ginsburg urged Congress to correct the court's ruling against a female employee who complained she was paid less than a man for the same work. So that was one thing that she complained about, and that's part of her strategy. That strategy of getting Congress to fix a decision led to the Lilly Ledbetter Pay Act. Now, she says congressional action is urgently required in order to correct the court's elevation of the Arbitration Act over workers' rights to act in concert. She even summarized her dissent in court, which apparently is rare and is really used to kind of hammer the point home. She said, when workers charge their employees with unlawful conduct, in this case violation of laws governing wages earned and hours worked, there is strength in numbers. And as a result of the ruling, she said, there will be a huge under-enforcement of federal and state statutes designed to advance well-being of vulnerable workers. And look, that is the point. This ruling does that on purpose. See, Gorsuch He was put there to advance the cause of multinational corporations. He is the most poor corporate judge on the court. This is a guy who once ruled that a man should be fired because he refused to freeze to death by leaving his semi-truck behind. Oh, no, you're supposed to freeze with your truck. No, fuck you. I'm not going to freeze. Oh, yeah? The company says, well, we're going to sue you then. And guess what? Most of the conservatives, all the other conservatives in that court decision were like, no, that's crazy. You shouldn't have to do that. Gorsuch was like, no, you should. The corporations above everything else, above everyone else. Corporations are people, and they're better than people. And that's why I will always side with them. So rulings like this from Gorsuch, well, look, they're a feature. That's why he was put there in the first place. So that's what he's there for. And look, there's a reason that these companies, which by the way, one of the companies is named Epic Systems, that went and brought this to the court. And there's a reason that these companies love arbitration. It's because in arbitration cases, they almost always win. Cornell University labor law professor Alexander Colvin had looked into a myriad of cases to find out who benefits most from arbitration. And of course, they find out that arbitration happens to serve the corporations, the companies. Using data reports from reports filed by the American Arbitration Association, Colvin's study analyzed 3,945 arbitration cases, of which 1,213 were decided by an award after a hearing, filed and reaching disposition between January 1st, 2003 and December of 31st, 2007. Now, that study concluded that the employee win rate amongst the cases was about 21.4%. So, less than a quarter of the time, employees actually won their arbitration cases. Now, that's lower than employee win rates reported in employment litigation trials, which is 36.4%, so that's almost a third, to 43.8% in state courts, which is almost half. That is significantly lower. Now, furthermore, in cases won, the median award was won by employees. The median award was amount of $36,500, and the mean was $109,858, both of which had to be substantially lower than award amounts reported in employment litigation. Now, they have some examples: $384,223 for federal court litigation, and $595,000 in state court litigation. So those amounts are drastically different. And $36,000 for federal versus $384,000. So, man, when you go through arbitration, you win less often, and you get less money if you actually do win. Furthermore, another finding shows that arbitrators that tend to work on cases for the same employer happen to either rule in favor of the company more often, or rule, if they have to rule in favor of the employee, they end up awarding amounts that are significantly lower than the average. Why? It's because they're the ones who end up hiring the arbitrators. They pay for it. So, look, is it any wonder why they love arbitration and why they want to put forced arbitration into these employment contracts? It's so they can win. And when they do. Now, there's another issue here, and you can't appeal an arbitration decision, even if you find out that you got much, much less than you actually deserve. Doesn't matter. Once an arbitration is done, you can't appeal. You're not allowed to. So that's why companies all over the United States right now are celebrating this decision. They're like, yes, that way we're going to win more. If we end up stealing your wages and you find out and you come after us, well, first of all, you can't get together with your fellow employees who also got screwed and come after us as a group, which actually makes your case stronger. Nope, can't do that. Now you have to do it one-on-one, where you get, if you even win, which is unlikely now, now you're going to get less compensation for us stealing your money. That's a disaster. Look, the workplace is stacked against working Americans. The system is rigged against you. Now, I'm sure, of course, that some corporate apologists will inevitably come onto this video and say, like, hey, man, if you don't like it, if you don't like arbitration, if your job makes you arbitrate, just find a new job. Let's get a different job, man. Well, that's becoming increasingly harder to do. In 2017, 54% of all companies reported using arbitration clauses in their employment contracts. And about 1/3 of those contracts barred workers from banding together and being able to sue when the company does something wrong. So that is a complete disaster. This court ruling also means that we could see the numbers of those companies that use these sort of forced arbitration contracts increase. So good luck finding a job in the near future that doesn't have that kind of contract. And this is only one of the 2 worker-related cases that are before the court. I wonder how they're going to rule on the next one. Look, this is the destruction of the American worker. This is the destruction of the unions. This is destruction of regular working people in the middle class, all for the benefit of the oligarchs. We are not a democracy anymore. We are an oligarchy. They have taken control of our political system. They have appointed people like Judge Gorsuch, which, by the way, Gorsuch shouldn't even be there. Merrick Garland, this was a stolen Supreme Court seat. And as much as I didn't like Merrick Garland, there's a pretty good chance that he would not rule on the side of corporations 100% of the time like Neil Gorsuch. Just saying. So that was absolutely a stolen seat. And look, this is what happens. So Republicans, they play dirty. They steal seats. They appoint people like this. And guess what? Their donors make off like bandits. And now you have no way that you can fight back. They're removing it every single day. Your ability to fight back against these people, your ability to, just get what you deserve for putting in an honest day's work. They want all that to go to the top. And if you don't notice it by now, well, pretty soon you're going to. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.